His shriek carried for a dozen miles. Not a roar, not a bellow, a scream, thin and sharp, like something tearing through the sky itself. Other dragons announced themselves with thunder. This one announced himself with a warning. And by the time you heard it, he was already falling toward you. Welcome to Westeros Within, where we journey into forgotten ages, hidden legends, and ancient mysteries. This is Meet the Dragons. Caraxes, the Blood Wyrm. His scales were the color of fresh spilled wine, a deep, vivid red that gave him his name before he ever saw a battlefield. But what made him different was not his color, it was his shape. Where Balerion was a mountain with wings, where Vhagar was ancient mass made airborne, the Blood Wyrm was something else entirely. He was lean, long, serpentine, built like a living blade. No excess, no bulk, every inch of him sharpened for speed and violence. He was not the biggest dragon alive. He was not the oldest. But the Dragonkeepers who fed and cared for the Targaryen dragons called him the fiercest of all the young dragons in the Dragonpit. And the Dragonkeepers had known them all. Caraxes was already a dragon of rideable size by the year 72, hatched sometime in the decades before. Prince Aemon Targaryen, eldest son of King Jaehaerys and heir to the Iron Throne, claimed him. Aemon was brave, dutiful, a warrior prince in the old tradition. That he chose the most dangerous dragon in the pit tells you what kind of man he was. Together they flew for 20 years. In the Fourth Dornish War, the Blood Wyrm burned alongside Vhagar and Vermithor, 3 dragons destroying an entire invasion fleet in a single afternoon, without losing a single man on the ground. It was the last time those 3 would fly on the same side. Then, on the island of Tarth, while the dragon rested and fed nearby, a crossbow bolt struck Prince Aemon through the throat. The Prince of Dragonstone fell, and his dragon could not save him. For 13 years after that, no one came. He waited in the dragon pit, riderless, growing larger and fiercer and more dangerous with every year, until one day, a young prince walked in. Daemon Targaryen was, by all accounts, made of light and darkness in equal parts. He was the greatest swordsman of his generation. He carried Dark Sister, the Valyrian steel blade once wielded by Queen Visenya herself. He was charming, reckless, violent, brilliant, and utterly ungovernable. When Daemon claimed the Blood Wyrm, it was not a man taming a beast. It was 2 dangerous things recognizing each other. In the Stepstones, the chain of islands between Westeros and Essos, Daemon launched a private war against an alliance of 3 free cities. It lasted 9 years. The Red Dragon was his weapon. They strafed beaches, shattered fleets, and hunted men into sea caves where even dragonfire could not follow. Daemon crowned himself king of the Stepstones and the Narrow Sea, then threw the crown at his brother's feet. He did not want the title. He wanted the war. And the war had given him something no other rider in Westeros possessed, a dragon that had been tested in real combat, year after year, for nearly a decade. When the civil war they called the Dance of the Dragons tore the Targaryen dynasty in 2, Daemon flew the Blood Wyrm to Harrenhal. He arrived on a stormy night. The Red Dragon landed atop Kingspyre Tower, the tallest of those 5 twisted spires, the same tower that Balerion the Black Dread had melted with black fire a century before. The garrison looked up at the Red Dragon, perched on the ruins another dragon had made, and surrendered without a fight. Not a single sword was drawn. Daemon took the largest castle in the realm, with nothing but the sight of the Blood Wyrm on its walls. Then he waited, 13 days. His nephew Aemon, The young prince with the sapphire in his empty eye socket had been burning the riverlands from the back of Vhagar, the oldest and largest dragon alive. Daemon sent him a message, a challenge. Come to Harrenhal. On the 14th day, Aemon came. The sun was setting over the God's Eye, the vast lake beside Harrenhal, with the Isle of Faces at its center, when both men took to the sky. Vhagar rose like a dark hill lifting from the earth. She was twice his size, perhaps more, and it did not matter. Caraxes dove from the direction of the setting sun, on Aemon's blind side, and struck Vhagar with a shriek that was heard a dozen miles away. He slammed into her with terrible force. They locked together, clawing, biting, burning, and the sky above the God's Eye turned red. Fisherfolk on the shore looked up and thought the clouds themselves had caught fire. As they fell, tangled and tearing at one another, Vhagar's claws raked him open. Her teeth ripped away one of his wings. But the Blood Wyrm, the lean red serpent, the fiercest thing the Dragonkeepers had ever known, locked his long neck around Vhagar's throat and bit down. He did not let go. In those last seconds of freefall, Aemon Targaryen stood in his saddle. He unbuckled his chains, and he leapt, across open air, from one dragon to the other, with Dark Sister in his fist, Visenya's sword, the sword of Vhagar's first rider. He drove it through the sapphire eye of Vhagar's last. Then all of them hit the water, and the column that rose from the God's Eye climbed as tall as the broken towers of Harrenhal.
Vhagar sank. Aemon, still chained to her saddle, sank with her. Daemon's body was never found, but the Blood Wyrm did not sink. Something had torn him open. One of his wings was gone. What should have been inside him was no longer inside him. And still, gutted, broken, dragging what remained of himself through the shallows, he crawled out of the lake. He pulled his shattered body from the water, across the mud, toward the walls of Harrenhal. And there, on the shore, in the open air, in front of the castle his kind had once melted, and his rider had once conquered, Caraxes died. He was the only one who made it out of the water, not the ancient Vhagar, not the one-eyed prince, not the rogue prince himself, only the Blood Wyrm, the fiercest, the last to fall.
His skull rests now in the cellars of the Red Keep, black as onyx, gathering dust beside the others. He was not the largest, he was not the oldest, but he was the one who killed Vhagar, the only dragon who ever did. He crawled from the same lake where Vhagar sank, beside the same castle Balerion melted 130 years before. 3 dragons, 1 cursed place, and the Blood Wyrm was the last of them to touch it. There are more stories to tell, more dragons to meet. Tell us in the comments which dragon you want next. Subscribe to Westeros Within and share this one with someone who loves dragons. Every like, every comment, every share helps us keep going.